Longtime NFL reporter answers some of the offseason questions that Raider Nation and myself both have had. That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for June 4th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. Show grows each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good. We shout him out. We appreciate him. It's not easy what he does, but he does a great job at it. So shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. As we normally do, we'll close out the show hearing from you. A lot of really good calls, a lot of really good texts, a lot of great feedback off the conversation that we had on Tuesday about mental health. So we'll try to get to as much as that as possible. Coming up in segment number 3 as we close out. Segment number 2, can the Raiders go from being worst to first? Is there a case for them? Absolutely. Is it likely? Well, not likely as far as I'm concerned, but there's many reasons why. Not just, well, it's the Raiders and they can't do it. No, any team could do it, right? There's been time and time again where we've seen that happen, but there's a lot of elements that are playing against the Raiders in 2025, year one under Pete Carroll. Why that's not likely to happen. Is it possible? Sure. But I'll give you the reasons why it's unlikely. And, well, you're looking at a 4 or 5 game improvement from what they did last year, and that'll be a great step in the right direction. I'll break that down coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day. As I always do, I'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So today we'll be out at Raiders OTAs. They start practicing around 10:30. It gets wrapped up at 12:15. Defensive coordinator Patrick Graham will speak to the media as well as some players, whoever the Raiders make available. And, of course, we'll look forward to that. It's the last OTAs that we're able to be at this week. The mandatory minicamp, the 10th, 11th, and 12th, will be there all 3 days, get to observe all of practice, and also talk with coaches and players following each one of those. And then it's done. They break for the summer, and then when they report for training camp, that'll be at the end of July. So only a few more of these days. We definitely appreciate them. And, of course, if we get anything good from Patrick Graham, we'll bring it to the table. I want to hear about the relationship with Pete Carroll, from the way that Pete Carroll likes to do things to how Patrick Graham likes to do things, and, you know, how he's feeling about this team moving forward. Because as we know, there's a ton of positivity that's going around the team. Just want to hear how it comes from the defensive coordinator's point of view. So we'll get to talk to PG coming up around 12:15 today. Definitely look forward to that. I also wanted you to hear some sound from John McClain, who's been covering the NFL for a very long time. I have him as a guest on my radio show each and every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Known John McClain for a very, very long time, going back to the time I was at ESPN Central Texas. And really, he's one of the reasons why I'm in Las Vegas now. He helped me, get to Las Vegas by introducing me to a couple people that I needed to know to help me get my foot in the door. And boom, here I am. So really good friend, just a wealth of knowledge at the same time. So there's been a few questions that's been posed to me that sometimes I don't necessarily always have the answer for. So I decided I would pepper John McClain with a few of the questions. One, on Tuesday, we were talking about Ashton Jeanty and if there was any challenges that he may face his first year in the league. We know what he can do as a runner. I started talking about blocking, how tough that's going to be. And that's not an Ashton Jeanty thing. That's just a running back, a young running back in the league type thing. Pass pro is not easy. So the first soundbite I want you to hear from John McClain is just why he believes Ashton Jeanty will do just fine when it comes to pass pro in the National Football League.
Well, knowing the kind of attitude he has, which he's all in on everything. Now, he didn't have to do that in college. They didn't want him to do it, but he's tough. And he's fearless, and he's willing to do anything. He's not like Deion Sanders. When Deion played, I'll knock that pass down. I'll cover that receiver like a blanket. Oh, somebody's running on my side. Well, get up here, one of the safeties. Ashton Jeanty can do anything because he's got the heart, and that comes from his upbringing, and the brains, and the willingness to take people on. He is a coach's dream.
John McClain talking about just knowing him as a person, the way that he gets after it, his work ethic, the way that, he's as he said, a coach's dream, right? He's going to do everything and try to do it at the best of his ability. And again, pass pro is not something that I'm going to say, oh, Ashton Jeanty's got this big hole in his game, he can't block. No, I'm not going to say that at all, right? And there was plenty of running backs that have come out of college that there was questions about their blocking skills, and they turned out to be great running backs, if not Hall of Famers. So not saying that that's going to slow down Ashton Jeanty, but it was just one of those questions because we've talked so glowingly about the young man, and is there any part of his game that we wonder if it's going to translate? Others on my radio show said, well, the competition is different from Boise State being in the Mountain West to the NFL. That's true. The speed of the game, that's true. I think that all kind of goes together. But most importantly, right, you want to be able to be on the field all 3 downs. You want to be that 3-down guy. You're the last line of defense. So a running back's got to be able to get in there and be able to pass pro as well. That's what Josh Jacobs did really well, which made him so valuable, is that he was able to block. So you heard what John McClain had to say about Ashton Jeanty and why he thinks he'll be just fine. Another question that's been asked to me has been about second-round pick Jack Bech. And I know that there's some outlets that say he signed his rookie deal. He has not signed his rookie deal. The Raiders have not made that official. When he does, they will do that. That's what they always do. They'll send out an email. They'll send out a social media post, all that other stuff. So I asked John McClain about that, and it's like, hey, man, mandatory minicamp is next week. Should there be any concern? Interesting nugget that I knew nothing about until John McClain told me. Check it out. The Raiders have mandatory minicamp next week, and then they break for the summer. But their second-round pick, Jack Bech, doesn't have a contract yet signed. So everyone under contract has to be there. That's required. But is there any concern that he's not signed yet? And should there be concern if mandatory minicamp comes around and he's still not signed?
They can blame that on the Texans. They gave a fully guaranteed contract to their first pick in the second round, wide receiver Jay Niggins, and then other play, and then the Browns did it. Corey Schlesinger, linebacker from UCLA. No other second round picks got him. All the agents, well, hey, they did it.
Right.
We want to do it. The Texans' second pick in the second round, offensive tackle Ariante Erzure, he's out there on the insurance program, but he hadn't signed because, of course, he wants a fully guaranteed contract. You did it for one, you could do it for all. So everybody that's struggling to get their second-round pick signed should blame Nick Caserio, the Texans' general manager. Now, as we get closer to training camp, of course they're going to sign. But it's just right now, it's unprecedented for this many second-round picks to still have not signed, and you can't blame them for asking.
So there's John McClain saying, blame the Texans, blame Nick Caserio. They gave a guaranteed contract to their second-round pick wide receiver. And, well, now everyone wants one, and I don't blame them. Right? If I'm in the second round, if I'm like Jack Bech, I'd want a guaranteed contract as well. And you heard what John McClain said. Their other second-round pick wants a guaranteed contract as well. And he's out there. He's practicing under the insurance policy. But at the same time, he's not signed yet either because, well, they're not trying to guarantee his deal. So, again, blame it on Nick Caserio. Blame it on the Houston Texans. It will get done at some point, not something to get all worked up about. But I just found that to be interesting, and I did not know that was the reason why. I knew that it was an issue, and I knew a lot of the second-round picks weren't signed yet. But I didn't know that I could squarely blame it on the Houston Texans. But you heard what John McClain had to say at that stage of the game. So the final question I had is about a story that I talked about on a Tuesday show where I said that Josh McDaniels had mandatory minicamp and then he had OTAs, another round of OTAs, and players are like, wait, what's going on? You have mandatory minicamp, then you break for the summer. Well, then I found out on Tuesday that Ben Johnson, the Lions head coach, has mandatory minicamp going on right now, and then they have another round of OTAs next week. So I asked McClain about that, and why would coaches decide that that's the way they want to do things? I got a question about OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Why is it that some coaches, like the Bears, for example, have mandatory minicamp, and then they'll have another week of OTAs instead of doing all their OTAs and then have a mandatory minicamp as the final week before they break for the summer?
I have no idea, Q. I didn't even know they did that. I know there was a talk. Somebody asked a coach, well, what if you had your mandatory minicamp to start the OTAs? And he said, well, then all the veterans would take off. The bottom line is OTAs are for the mental part. If you have, like, say the Las Vegas has got a new head coach in Pete Carroll. And even though you've watched Pete for decades, you know what he's all about. You still got to learn his systems. Anytime you have a new coach or guys that say you have a new offensive coordinator, like is the case in Houston, it's all mental. It doesn't help running routes when you can't be covered and you're not wearing pads. But what coaches want to see is what they teach in the meeting rooms, what carries over to the field. If a player is struggling in the meeting rooms, and it happens because all players are not the same, and some positions are harder, or if he gets it right in the meeting rooms and he can't take it over to the field. And coaches know you can't tutor every player the same way. Some guys are faster learner than others, but the others may have a lot of talent. So people tend to take position coaches for granted. It's all about the coordinators. But, man, those position coaches, they got to figure out what makes a guy tick and what is his learning capability and make sure that you do what he can handle. You don't overload him mentally. But that I'll never forget, after the first day of the Texans' rookie minicamp in 2017, their number one pick, they had traded up with Cleveland to draft Deshaun Watson. And there was time people thought, well, he's going to take a while to develop. Don't expect much of him as a rookie. And after the first day of the minicamp, the coach, Bill O'Brien, as I was walking off the field, walked over and he said, hey, off the record, he said, this kid is unbelievable. We teach him stuff at night after the practice. And then the next day, it's obvious he's been studying because he knows exactly what he's supposed to do. So those are the kind of things that coaches look for at this kind of time of year.
Very lengthy answer right there from John McClain. And then he even goes into the story about, hearing from someone saying, well, how about you do mandatory minicamp at the beginning? Well, then the veterans won't show up to anything else because OTAs are just voluntary. But it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense why you would do OTAs, mandatory minicamp, and another round of OTAs. Like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Once mandatory minicamp is over, you let them break for the summer. It just makes organizational sense, right? And when I mean organized, I mean like 1, 2, 3, 4, having everything planned out and making everything make sense. It just, from a standpoint of, again, it makes sense. Why wouldn't you do that? But, Josh McDaniels didn't do that when he was the head coach of the Raiders. Ben Johnson's not doing that in Chicago. They're actually doing their mandatory minicamp right now, and then they got OTAs next week, where the Raiders, OTAs today, they have OTAs tomorrow, and then mandatory minicamp next week. That's the way that it should be. Coming up in segment number 2, worst to first. Is it a possibility? Absolutely. But there are some roadblocks, some big-time roadblocks, and we'll talk about that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get into that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's FanDuel. The NBA Finals, man, can't wait for them to get started, right? The Thunder and the Pacers get started on Thursday. Every night's going to deliver highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have way more ways than ever to play smart and win really big. I know a lot of people think OKC is just going to run through Indiana. I don't think it's going to be that easy, but this is a great way to stay in on the action and stay locked in on the NBA Finals. And I'm sure $200 in bonus bets could add a little bit of juice to it as well. Oh, how can you get that? Well, I'm glad you asked. You got to be new to FanDuel, and if you are, perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, that $200 in bonus bets that I mentioned, you'll get it just like that. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I want to take a few minutes here to explain where I'm coming from when it comes to the Raiders win total, my expectations for year 1 under Pete Carroll. I've had a lot of people hit me up and say, well, Q, the Raiders could go from worst to first. We see it all the time. We saw the Texans year 1 with C.J. Stroud. We saw the Commanders last year. They were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Well, all that's true. And the Raiders sure can do that. I've been as a matter of fact, from before the time the schedule dropped to the time that the schedule dropped to right now, that 8-9 wins should be reasonable expectations and realistic expectations for year one. I've had some people say, why do you hope that they only win 8? It's not about hope. There's nothing about hope on this show at all. It's all about, like I said, realistic expectations and trying to give you an honest assessment and approach to this team. That's, to me, my responsibility is to be as honest and open as possible. And if I, at some point, see this team and say, hey, man, this team is playing way above its skis, it's playing really well, I think that they have a chance to be special, trust and believe I won't hesitate to say that. But right now, one, it's early June, right? OTAs are going on. That's it. Mandatory minicamps next week. No training camp, no 53-man roster, right? And you're talking about a team that went 4-13 in 2024, and once again, for the third year in a row, have a new head coach, right? And now I have a lot of confidence in this head coach. I have a lot of confidence in the GM. I have a lot of confidence that this team is getting better, but I also realize that this team's depth is not huge. And, well, we saw what happened when their depth got tested in 2024. Once it got hit, that's where it all started to fall apart, right? Especially defensively. But again, we'll go back to the worst of first, right? The Texans, CJ Stroud's rookie year, they went 2 round deeps in the playoffs, right? But remember, they had CJ Stroud that they drafted very early, and then they had Will Anderson right after that. So they had 2 difference makers, 2 quarterbacks, quarterback on offense, quarterback on defense. And oh, by the way, they play in the AFC South. Who else is in the AFC South? Colts, Titans, Jags. None of those teams strike fear in anybody. None of those teams are a team that you look at and you're like, yeah, no, that's a juggernaut right there, right? Those are teams that appear on the Raiders schedule, and I believe everyone believes that the Raiders could win all those games. The Jaguars game, I think we're all looking at and say, well, maybe that's going to be a little close, and why is that? Because of Travis Hunter, and that's it, right? But the Colts, I think everyone believes that's going to be a dub. Titans, I think everyone believes that that's going to be a dub, or at least should be a dub for the Raiders, and then the Jaguars, right? So, yeah, and then the Houston Texans didn't play as well in year 2 with CJ Stroud. So they regressed a little bit. But again, the biggest key for the Texans going from worst to first is the fact that they are in the AFC South. Then you talk about the Commanders last year, right? 1 game away from the Super Bowl. That is true. But trust and believe they had a lot go their way in 2024, right? And a lot is expected that they're going to actually probably take a step back in 2025. Why, you say? Well, they had 8 one-score victories in the regular season. 8 one-score victories in the regular season. The Raiders had that in 2021. What happened the next year? Those one-score games, they lost. But the Commanders had 8 of them in the regular season and 1 in the playoffs in the wild card round of Tampa Bay. That really, honestly, if Tampa Bay doesn't puke all over themselves, they probably win that game as well. But again, I don't want to take away from the Commanders because they won that. But think about this. Go back to week 8 versus Chicago Bears. What happened in that game? Do you remember? Remember, that was the game where Jaden Daniels had that Hail Mary at the end of the game that somehow was completed while the Chicago Bear was barking at the crowd and talking noise to the crowd about go home and you took the L and we're great. Then all of a sudden realized the ball was snapped and he wasn't paying attention. And oh, by the way, the ball sails right over his head and ends up being a touchdown, right? That was week 8. And a lot of things went their way following that. So again, don't want to take anything away from the Commanders, but there's some elements to the fact that how they ended up getting that done. Got to give them credit, though, for doing what they did. That leads us to the Raiders. First of all, they play in the AFC West, right? The Chiefs have been to the Super Bowl 3 times since 2019. No, sorry. They've won the Super Bowl 3 times since 2019 and have appeared in 5. They've won the AFC West 9 years in a row, right? And oh, by the way, the Raiders have yet to beat the Chiefs in Allegiant Stadium, period. They have not beat them in Las Vegas since Allegiant Stadium opened its doors. Matter of fact, the Chiefs, take it a step further, have not lost in Allegiant Stadium since they've opened their doors because they won the Super Bowl against the 49ers. So that's one big hurdle that the Raiders have to overcome. Do I believe the Chiefs are going to take a step back in 2025? Yep, I do. But what's a step back for the Chiefs who've won the division 9 seasons in a row, right? I think it's going to be a lot closer. You know, oh, by the way, Denver and the Chargers are both teams that were in the playoffs a season ago. Now, I think that they still have a lot to prove, right? I mean, Bo Nix is going into year 2 with the Broncos, but since Sean Payton has arrived there, they've continued to get better year in after year, which is what I expect the Raiders to do under Pete Carroll. That's why I slotted them in at 8 wins even before the schedule came out. I thought that was realistic. Pete Carroll has never had a season where he's won less than 7 games, so I gave him 8. Remember, there was a time I had people calling in saying, Q, I don't see 8 wins on the schedule. Where do you see it? Right? I looked at the first half of the schedule. I said, oh, they can get 4 dubs, right? They got New England on the road. They got the Chargers at home. That's Monday night. Washington's going to be a tough game. I see the Bears, Colts, Titans. All those 3 teams in a row. I think the Raiders could win all 3 of those. Then they go to Kansas City, and then they have their bye week. You beat either New England or L.A., that's 4 wins right there by the bye week. Right. So that's already. But there was people calling in saying, I don't even see 8 wins on the schedule. And now because all of the positivity and the positive feels and the positive vibes, and a lot of people, even nationally, are giving the Raiders some props, I think a lot of folks are expecting, okay, wait, hold on. You know what? This team can win 11 or 12. And again, they can. But I think that's best case scenario. That's a ceiling type thing. Like we had the text on yesterday's show, Q, that they can go to the Super Bowl. Honestly, if they do that, that'll be fantastic. I would do a cartwheel up and down the hallway, and I'm not a gymnast. It just seems like it's a bigger statement. It's too lofty, too quick, if that makes sense, right? I mean, look, I know it's been a long time. Believe me, well before I ever got behind a mic and started talking about the Raiders, I was a Raider fan. So I've been there, done that, right? I've been the guy that was pissed off ever since the Raiders lost to John Gruden in Tampa Bay. Like, I get it. I know that they haven't been to the playoffs enough time since that Super Bowl loss. I totally get it, right? The one thing that has remained the same since that Super Bowl loss is Raider Nation. Not the coaches, not the players, not the GMs, not anyone that's been in place. What's been the same since then has been Raider Nation. So trust and believe, I understand. But I'm not going to sit here and come on the show and sell you a bunch of, hope and champagne wishes that, oh, man, this team's going to go win 12 games. I see them going to the playoffs, and they might even win the Super Bowl. Like, that would be irresponsible for me to do. Now, I will say this. In 2016, when they went on that run, I remember being in studio in 95.7 the game the night before the Christmas Eve game, which obviously that was the beginning of the end that year, right? The Christmas Eve game was against the Colts at the Coliseum when Derek Carr broke his ankle. I was in studio with Zachariah that night. Just came into town. I was going to be at that game. Me, Mama Q, and Little Q's, right? We're going to be at that game on Christmas Eve. It was going to be fantastic. And I remember Zachariah saying, hey, man, the Raiders have had a really good season. They could build off this next year. But the Raiders were getting every bounce to go their way. They were like the Commanders, right? They were getting every single bounce, Hail Marys, last-minute wins. They even started the season with, remember the 2-point conversion in New Orleans? Like, everything was going their way that season. So I told Zachariah, well, why not now? Right? You've gotten this far. Why not go win the whole thing now? Right? So my expectations for the team where it was when the season started to where it got to, oh, hey, man, they're looking at the playoffs. That changed. And I think that that's okay. But that was after they actually hit the field and you started to see what they look like as a unit, as a team, the bounces that were going their way, the way that it just felt like that it was their year. Right? I'm not going to sit here and, again, in early June say that, oh, man, this is the Raiders' year and this is why. That would be me selling you a bill of goods. The Raiders have to stay healthy. I do think they'll be healthier than they were last year, but there's questions on the offensive line. There's questions about the cornerback room. There's questions about the linebackers right now, right? I mean, there's legit questions about this team, especially the depth right now. And Christian Wilkins, right? Is he going to come back? Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be able to start training camp? Is he going to be able to start the regular season? Is he going to be that difference maker along the defensive line that he was signed to be when Tom Telesco gave him a big-time deal? So there's a lot of reasons why this season could be challenging. The Raiders playing with one of the toughest division, if not the toughest division in football. It's a lot different than the AFC South. That's for sure. And even the NFC East. I get it. The Commanders went through that division, but the Giants, they're a stinker, right? They're terrible, right? They'll probably be looking for a new head coach by like week 4 or 5. The Eagles, they're the defending Super Bowl champs, so you know what kind of team they are. And the Cowboys, they're good in the regular season. They stink in the playoffs. But the Commanders, they did really well year 1, so I'll give them that. But this team has got to go out there and start to prove it. It doesn't mean that we can't come back and have conversations about, hey, man, this team's a lot better than I expected. And I'll be the first to say that. Hey, man, this team looks great. But to double the win total that they had in 2024 is a great start. Doesn't mean it has to be the end, but it's a great start to the Pete Carroll run. Sean Payton had that same run in Denver, right? Got 8 wins his first season. Second year there, boom, in the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. So it can be done, but sometimes it takes steps. It's not a microwave society all the time. Sometimes you actually got to put that bad boy in the oven and actually let it cook, as opposed to put it in the microwave, punch in 60, and hope it comes out good. I can't cook, so the microwave is my style. Believe me, I don't like my style. That's why I like to go out to eat. Right? Simple. We all know, man, microwave is not the way to go, but sometimes it's the only way to go. Sometimes you have to do it like that. But normally, most times, that's why we say you don't win games by building a team through free agency. Most of the time that's not how it works. You've got to build it through the draft. The Raiders have had a couple good drafts, have some good quality players on the roster. Do they need more? Sure. But they're on the right path. Now let's see them go out there and play some games. And obviously it's only June, so they're not playing any games anytime soon. That's what I got for you. It's not about hope. It's not about champagne wishes. It's definitely not about me hating on the Raiders and hoping that they aren't a successful team, because if anyone wants them to be a great team, it's me. Winning's fun. Covering a team that's winning is fantastic. It's good for business, too. If you want to if you want to be brutally honest about it, everything is good. Right? The radio station benefits, the podcast benefits, everyone benefits. There's a smile on everyone's face. Everyone's cheery. Calls are fantastic. Texts are fantastic. Tweets are fantastic. It is all good when they're winning. I love for them to get back to winning. But again, I'm trying to bring you a realistic, honest approach to the upcoming season early in June. That's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll hear from you, your calls and texts, 707-654-4693. We'll close out the show hearing from you. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll start things off with a text from DJ Raider in Arizona. Go DJ, because that's my DJ. Go DJ, because that's my DJ. DJ Raider in Arizona says, morning, Q. 3 things. First, love your piece on mental health this morning. We all have our stories, but the more it's talked about, the less of a negative stigma it has, and the more we'll seek the help that's needed. Taking care of your body, mind, and soul should be a part of everyone's daily battle rhythm. Second, you stated that since the Raiders haven't announced Besh's signings, that you believe it hasn't happened yet. I read a May 9th Yahoo Sports article stated he's been signed to a 4-year, $7.56 million deal with $2.14 million signing bonus. Should we disregard until the Raiders make the official announcement? And last, I've been super impressed with all the positive press I've been reading about Dante Thornton Jr. Think he might push Besh and or Tucker for not just more playing time, but a starting wide receiver role. Love your show. Keep doing your thing. Locked on for life. Go Raiders. Just win, baby. As DJ Raider in Arizona. Thanks so much for the text. You're spot on when it comes to mental health. Appreciate that. You wouldn't believe, or maybe you would, how much great positive feedback I got about the mental health conversation that we had in segment number 2 on Tuesday's show. And I had a lot of really good testimonies, and I'm not going to share them because it's not my business to put, someone else's business in the street. But really good stuff, right? And people, thanking me for that segment. And that's not what we do it for. It's for thanks, but just acknowledgement. And sometimes it takes things to happen for us to realize, or me to realize, like, you know what, this is something that we probably need to talk about. So I'm glad that you appreciated that. Until the Raiders make it official when it comes to Jack Besh, nothing's official. Right. And a lot of it has to do with the guaranteed money. The fact that what you heard from John McClain in segment number 2, that the Texans are guilty as charged for the reason why so many second-round picks have not been officially signed to their contract. And, I've been hearing some good things about Dante Thornton Jr. I had a quick second to talk to him at the Silver and Black Gala a few Saturdays ago, and I was talking to him about that Tennessee offense and how it translates. And he was let it be known that, hey, it doesn't always translate. A lot of these guys go into the league and they don't turn into that guy because, well, they might not put in the work. But he did assure me that he was putting in the work and that it was going to translate for him. He didn't see any problem in being able to become a factor in the league pretty quickly. I don't think he'll push Besh. I think he'll push Tucker because they play the similar role, the guys that can stretch the field. Besh, I'm excited to see what he does. He brings some toughness where he can, win in the middle of the field. He can either deliver a blow or get hit hard. Right? But he's a guy, he likes to block as well. So I think that he brings another element, but he'll definitely push Tucker. That's for sure. I think that's going to be a really good training camp battle. Right now, you kind of take it with a grain of salt because it's OTAs and there's no pads. There's no, real physicality or anything going on. There might be a little bump here, a bump there, but there's nothing real physical going on. So once that starts happening, they put the pads on in training camp. That's when you'll get a better idea of what he can bring to the table. But thanks so much for that text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider X. Lengthy call. He's calling to talk about home field advantage, Las Vegas, and a couple other subjects that we talked about here on the show. Here he is, Raider X.
Yo, Q, this is Raider X. I just wanted to chime in off a conversation that I heard off of Vinny's show. And it also kind of ties into some of the stuff that you've been talking about over the last month or so as we start, looking forward to this next season, which is the home field advantage, and the whole trip to Vegas and, the change of culture and the enthusiasm and the stability and men in the room and all that other good stuff. And really got me really thinking about, what would it take? And it just, very simple. It takes to, get wins and to really bring it back. And, it also makes me think, and that's what the point I really wanted to talk about and get some insight from yourself and the rest of the Raider Nation is, getting back and getting that kickstart. Think about 25 years ago, we had that turn of the century, and Gruden was taking over, for the Raiders, well, a little more than 25 years ago, but Gruden was taking over and really outside the box. And, this little freckled guy looking like Chucky, was doing things a totally different way, really outside of the conventional Al Davis, thing, and bringing in key players, brought in another, type of quarterback, had other key players in there, getting some other players from outside the team and doing some other things, really kind of ties back not only to that, but also even back to the heydays, the Madden and the Tom Flores, of really talking about Raider legend, Raider lore. And, getting some of those players, you're talking about Max Crosby, we had Spillane in there. Now you got like the Bowers or, the JPJ, some grit, some lore, because, it all started when they played, the Autumn Wind. That damn song gives me chills, man. It just really makes you feel like a Raider. And you think about it, what other team in the NFL or in professional sports has something like that truly has a culture, a legend, this lore about them that just makes you just want to go there and go to battle and win, and the team embrace them. And the Raiders can truly do a turnaround, even for a few years in a row. All those youth and all those kids that the Raiders been, going to the community and sponsoring so damn well, man, they're going to be bloodthirsty Raider fans in Vegas. That's it, and it grows again. Here goes the era again. We all fall in love with the lore of the Raiders. Man, just win, baby, at all damn costs. I think get some feedback. I know I kind of rambled a bit, but man, these damn Raiders, man, I love them to death, man. I just want them to come through, But Raider X out.
X-Man, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I like the thoughts that you brought up, man. It's funny. I just referenced Gruden 1.0. That team, I referenced that on Tuesday's show. And, that was kind of who we saw them start to develop into. Like, oh, man, we're starting to realize this team has a chance to be really good. And like you said, at the turn of the century, then all of a sudden they became really good. Like that victory against Kansas City, I believe, was in 99. And then in 2000 is when they became really good. So I think that you're onto something. Again, that's something that I kind of referenced on Tuesday's show. The one thing I know about the Raiders, the Raider Nation, is that they're always going to represent and hold it down on the road, at home, whatever the case may be. They're a storied franchise for a reason. They could, earn the type of respect that, that where everyone's really talking about them in a glowing way if they go out there and hold it down and win games, right? They'll have Raider Nation packed to the gills at Allegiant Stadium if they consistently win games. They've just got to improve their overall record, what they do. They've got to have one of those big-time seasons where Raider Nation sees how competitive they are, sees how good they are, beats a couple teams that maybe they're not supposed to beat, right? And again, we talked about wins and losses in segment number 2. That's how you get to 10 or 11 wins. Beat a couple teams that you're not supposed to. Win the games that you're supposed to. Then you have some 50-50 games. Take a couple of those. The next thing you know, you look up, you're like, whoa, this team's at 10 wins. Whoa, this team's fighting for the playoffs. That's how you get there. That's what they've got to do. And Allegiant Stadium will work itself out. It's always going to be a destination location. It's Las Vegas. It just is what it is. But the more the Raiders win, the more Allegiant Stadium will be packed to the gills with silver and black. Thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Matthew in Wisconsin. Hey, Q, it's Matthew from Wisconsin. I'm generally a Packers fan, but I've quietly been a Raiders fan for a long time for various reasons. In particular, Edgar Bennett coming over to the Raiders as a coach, and now Eric Stokes joining the team. Both of these guys are a favorite of mine, good players and great people. I'm planning a trip to Vegas later this summer for either a training camp visit or attending the preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers. My two simple questions. When do we expect the training camp schedule to be announced, and are these practices generally open to the public? Thanks for the great podcast. And on a personal note, love on your family means even more to me now after recently losing my mom after a courageous but brief battle with cancer. Thank you for reminding us every day to value what's most important. That's Matthew in Wisconsin. Thank you for the text. Sorry for your loss. All right, let me make sure I get that clear first and foremost. And I'm glad that stands out to you. And, it just kind of gives you some good thoughts on your mom who, unfortunately lost the battle with the big C. But thank you for the information and just kind of sharing your story. As far as training camp, no, it's not open to the public. It's always kind of open to sponsors, a select few of season ticket holders. It's a very limited space. That's why they wanted to go off campus last year and they went to Costa Mesa, but then that was in the LA area that the Rams and the Chargers own. So then it was still limited. So they were looking to find another place. I know Napa was a conversation that they had. Nevada, where UNR is, Nevada Reno, that was a location that they were thinking about. But ultimately they ended up at the Intermountain Health Performance Center, their headquarters. So it's a very limited space as far as fans go. So no, it won't be open to the fans, the general public for training camp. A select few will get in, and that's it. But the preseason game against the 49ers, that'll be wide open like some old school TV antennas. That'll be alumni night as well. So that should be fun, where there's a lot of Raider alumni, famous Raider alumni that'll be back, be at the stadium, be there, and you get an opportunity to possibly meet some of your favorites, if you have some favorites. But that's kind of the general consensus when it comes to training camp in the preseason. Thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, I just got time for a couple more. Got a call from Smooth Raider from Valley Joe, Vallejo, California. He's calling to talk about segment number 2 on Tuesday's show, where we spent time speaking about mental health. Here's Smooth Raider from the Valley Joe.
What's going on, Q? This is Smooth Raider calling in via Vallejo. I just wanted to touch on yesterday's story on Locked On, the mental health segment. It's near and dear to my heart, and I really had to call in because, I just feel like it's detrimental to the team and it's monumental at the same time, Coming from a 10-year veteran, who's been deployed 3 times and, suffers from PTSD, I feel like it's a great thing. A lot of people just see a product being put on the field and don't think of the other aspects of that product. You want to take care of that product. You want to be personable with that product and make sure that they're physically good and mentally good. For me, suffering from PTSD, I didn't think I had an issue, until I actually sat down and talked to someone and had, therapy. It was all for the military purposes and stuff, but, it was monumental. And for the Raiders to provide those type of service, I think that the future is going to be bright for us, because they really care about the players. And we have 2 individuals within that organization that are emotionally intelligent, and I'm talking about Spytek and I'm talking about Pete Carroll. Just like with anything, my father always tell me, your kids are going to be a reflection of you. And same thing with Pete Carroll, the way he is, he's emotionally intelligent. That's going to bleed into the players, and they're going to go out there and play. And I just want people to realize, there's a different aspect of football. It's not just, the grit and the grind. We got to realize these guys are still human beings, and they still have issues, even though they got millions of dollars and all that stuff. They still have issues. So for the Raiders to do that, I feel it's monumental to provide those services. It's great. It's a great thing. So that's all, Q. I'm going to keep it real short. I'm going to leave you with this. Raider Nation, stand up one time for the one time. Smooth Raider out.
Smooth Raider, thanks so much. 10-year vet, deployed 3 times, suffers from PTSD. First of all, thank you for your service, right? When I talk about, veterans on Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, anytime we could talk about servicemen and servicewomen, I'm talking to you, right? Again, thank you for what you have done multiple times and committed to multiple times, because without men and women like you, there's definitely no me. Let's make that perfectly clear. Without people like you, men and women like you, there is no me. I'm not doing what I do every single day without you guys. So thank you so much for that. Appreciate the perspective that you have as well when it comes to, emotional intelligence, talking about Pete Carroll, John Spytek. I just think that's a great call in general on mental health and how important it is. And, the Raiders are hosting their mental wellness expo. They're doing that on Friday at the M Resort. That's the second annual one that they've got going on. I was able to be at the first one last year. It was great. Just a great turnout. A lot of the players told me how much it benefited them and how much they appreciated Mark Davis for putting that on and making sure that it went down the right way. And unfortunately, because it's a little earlier in the day than it was last year, I won't be able to be there in attendance, but it's really a big deal. And I think more teams need to go ahead and follow the lead of the Raiders and absolutely do that, because again, the players are very important, but the mental health side of things is huge for players and obviously for everyone in general as well, just like you. And again, thank you for your service. Appreciate the call and the feedback. We'll close things out with a text from David in New England. It says, "Hey, Q, David in New England here. I've noticed recently a part of Raider Nation is claiming that there's a quarterback competition with Aiden O'Connell. Some have even gone as far as to say he is outperforming Geno in OTAs. Was wondering if you think there's any chance, understanding that Pete is always going to push for competition, that Aiden O'Connell has a chance to start over Geno. I personally feel O'Connell's ceiling is a solid backup. Thanks, Q. Appreciate your segment on mental health yesterday. Raiders." That's David in New England. And yeah, I'm with you. And thank you for the text. No, there's not a quarterback competition, right? The Raiders know who their starting quarterback is. It's Geno Smith. Yes, Pete Carroll wants competition, so Geno just can't walk in there and think, well, it's my job and I ain't got to work for it. He knows what it's all about. But they made a trade for him for a reason. They brought him in. He's going to be the starting quarterback. Now, there could be a battle for the backup quarterback spot, O'Connell and Cam Miller, even though I think O'Connell will definitely win that job, just the fact that he's going into year 3 of his NFL career. But I think that there's no doubt about it that Geno Smith is the quarterback, and everyone's comfortable because now, instead of having that quarterback competition like they had last year where they never established who the real deal starter, they named Minshew, but nobody there in attendance at training camp saw Minshew winning. Matter of fact, I remember the show before it was announced. I thought that Aiden O'Connell had won the job, even though neither one of them guys did a good job. So, yeah, Geno Smith is the no doubt about it starter. I don't know where the competition between him and O'Connell's come from. I don't know where the O'Connell's outperforming Geno Smith in training camp. The fact that Geno threw, 3 interceptions one practice, maybe that's what they're talking about, but that's not what it is. That's not what it is. Geno Smith throwing interceptions now is what you want him to do. Right, he's working into a new offense under Chip Kelly. He's learning new wide receivers. He's learning a whole lot of new. So you want him to make mistakes right now. This is a perfect time to make mistakes because when it gets September 7th, and they're on the road in New England, it's go time. So you don't want to make mistakes then. You don't want interceptions then. And look, he's got to clean up his ball security in the red zone. That is an area of his that you definitely have to pay attention to and say, hey, man, he can't do that this year. He does that this year, it could be a problem. Mina Kimes, who's a big Seahawk fan, she's been very adamant about Geno Smith and how good he could be. She's pointed out the fact that that's the one area that he definitely needs to clean up is the red zone ball security. Matter of fact, she's going to be a guest on my radio show coming up this Thursday on Raider Nation Radio 920, Unnecessary Roughness. So I look forward to that conversation, do a little deep diving with Mina, and anything good from that I'll definitely bring to the show coming up on that Friday episode as well. So that's about it for today's show. I got a text from the 314, also a text from Brian in the 570. We'll get to that coming up tomorrow. We'll have more news and notes. Obviously, we'll have more conversation, but we'll talk to Patrick Graham around 12:15. We'll talk to some players following that as well. And anything good that we get from that, we'll be talking about it right here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.